Hello, it's me again. Today I'm here to talk about creativity in a crisis. There's a question that I'm here to ask, and that question is what if creative mode is survival mode? What if creative mode is survival mode? That question doesn't really make any sense until you play the game Minecraft, um, which you might have played with your kids or on your own or with some other people's kids. But when you enter Minecraft, the world of Minecraft, it presents you with a choice. Do you want to play in creative mode or survival mode? And creative mode basically um, is there with where you are given access to all of the resources in the game, the entire palette of materials, colours, um, and you can create anything that you want, that your heart desires. And you can fly. Survival mode is very different. Survival mode is you have no resources, you have to make everything yourself, you have to mine everything yourself, you have to build something that's quite drab and quite functional and utilitarian, and the goal is, of course, to survive, through the night, through the zombies and skeletons and spiders and whatnot. So they're really, really different, and I think it's culturally entrenched, that idea that actually in a crisis, creativity is the last thing that we need. And we need to somehow sort of switch it off. If you look at all the government press briefings, it's been all about functional communication. It really hasn't been about, there's no role for creativity. So what is the role for creativity in a crisis? Well, actually, you can ask creatives, and it's very interesting at the beginning of the crisis what we saw. A lot of creatives leapt to want to be able to help. They wanted to be able to do something, and quite often the creative answer that we come up with is kind of the wrong kind of creativity. So I've got in front of me, one of the first pieces of creative that was done in the coronavirus crisis, which is the McDonald's logo, with the two arches of the McDonald's logo separated because it was all about, separation, social distancing. Much like the International Women's Day McDonald's logo turned upside down for the day to be a W, not an M. Essentially like get onto Photoshop, get into Illustrator. What can I do to create the perfect poster and win an award? Essentially useless piece of creativity in this crisis, and really not what we want brands like McDonald's to be doing. I'm looking at another one, which is Guinness. A beautiful poster, absolutely award winning. Where the top of the Guinness pint is a white sofa. And it just says "Stay at home." I'm looking at another one, which is the Coca-Cola logo, with the letters all stretched out. Staying apart is the best way to stay united. Now, arguably, this is not the creativity that we need in a crisis. This is creativity sort of reduced to its kind of lowest form, which is making posters to fill ad space. And there's a great quote from Anselmo Ramos, which I will read out to you, which says, "To every brand confused about what to do right now, there's a fine line between being relevant and being opportunistic. Not every brand should do a coronavirus idea. Actions will speak louder than words. Everything you do or don't do communicates. It's a pandemic, not a brief." And I think that's something that brands have really, really struggled with. We've seen all of the supercuts of kind of like big brands going, we're with you now more than ever in these unprecedented times. Here we are, and really kind of communicating through this. And that really, to me, is like the wrong kind of creativity right now. That's the creativity that says my job is to make ads, posters, films, or whatever, and that's all creativity is. And if you ask the 6-year-old kid what creativity is, they wouldn't think that at all. They would think that creativity is perhaps the ability to look at a cheap, readily available scuba diving mask that you can buy from Decathlon and go, maybe we could turn that into a piece of vital medical equipment using a 3D printer. It's the creativity to go, right now we've got huge factories making beer, or honey or perfume, and what if we could turn those into factories that were making hand sanitizer? It's about saying we've got loads of unneeded production capacity, in our high-end fashion brand. Maybe we could be making scrubs. It's that kind of creativity to really rethink your business model, to really rethink what you do. And the way you get to that kind of creativity is the only way to do it is to change what matters. So really, I think that the history of advertising is very, very interesting. You go back to kind of Victorian, Edwardian times. It was really simply about salience, getting your product out there and reminding people to use it. You'd have a picture of your cigarette and it would say smoke X cigarettes, and that's all it was. As it became more crowded and as advertising got more sort of sophisticated, planners and psychologists joined, and they said actually it's about joining up, those basic consumer needs for products with human needs, and our human needs being, the needs to be. I mean, it started out in a very dark place actually, where they would largely play on kind of fear, but we've got a richer tapestry now of human needs, which are to feel loved, to feel important, to have status, to feel valued, to feel like you're achieving something, whatever those things are. And really what a lot of our advertising is joining up those kind of consumer needs with human needs. Gillette, the best a man can get. But actually, I think what we've shifted to now, where the canvas has shifted, is really to thinking beyond human needs into humanity needs, because actually what human beings are worried about is the state of humanity. They're worried about the crisis, they're worried about the climate, they're worried about survival, they're worried about the economy. They're worried about all these things that matter much more now, actually, because I would argue, really, since the birth of kind of rolling news and digital news, we're so exposed to all of those things, all of those issues in the world, and we actually those are the things that we pay attention to. So that's where that focus needs to shift. It's actually now, I think, the best briefs, the most interesting briefs, don't come out of the intersection between consumer needs and human needs. They come out of the intersection between human needs and humanity needs. And that's a really interesting place to start your brief from, that will put you in a completely different space. And all of that kind of was true, and all of that is kind of 100 or 1,000 times more true right now. So I think we've really shifted, from a very basic conversation, which is about, what brands want and what people want, and seeing if we can align those, to what brands can do, what capacity do they have to affect change and do things, and what people really, really need. And I think that's a new relationship between people and brands. So the first thing to do is to change what matters, and to really think about what matters to people, and to really factor in kind of humanity needs into your brief, which sends you down a different place. The second really important thing feels to me to change the playground, and it's to change the playground that creatives are allowed to operate in. So if you imagine that a creative idea now can live across the policies and the practices that a business might have, it can live across the products that they make, it can live across how they treat their staff, it could live across, how their buildings and what they do with them, the programs, the partnerships that they make, promotions that they do, the way that they engage with customers. Ideas can live right across all of those spaces, and they don't just live in advertising anymore. And that means that creative ideas, can have a bigger impact, arguably. So I'm thinking and looking at some of the things that have been, Cannes Award winners, or have really, made a material difference. They've been really good. Actually, those two things aren't always the same, right? But things like, Microsoft shifting to adaptive controllers, to really change how people think about Microsoft and Xbox, to being, creating gaming as an incredibly inclusive place now. I'm thinking about Gillette introducing not just the best a man can get, but a razor, that you can use to shave another person. Maybe somebody could try one of those on me. I'm thinking about Vetamont's, shop window in Harrods. You're taking over the shop window of Harrods to demonstrate the scale of waste in fast fashion. I'm thinking about Boost Mobile in the States turning their stores into polling booths to enable people to vote in the last election. I'm thinking about Volvo releasing all of its data on crash tests and doing all of that work to basically go actually like crash tests, but mainly tested on men's-sized dummies, which means that safety equipment doesn't work as well for women, and like introducing an industry-wide initiative to fix that. I'm thinking about Budweiser, introducing going 100% renewable energy in its production, but also introducing a mark, a kite mark that any other brand can pick up. So they're open sourcing, all of that. And all of those things are really big ideas that work way past kind of advertising or communication, and arguably have a bigger impact. I'm thinking about Huawei's story sign app, which won loads of awards last year, but is genuinely like really, really life changing for a lot of children growing up without hearing. So all of those things are ideas that really work beyond advertising. You know, they might work in packaging, they might work in a kind of different way of selling a product. They might they might be working in an app, in a store. They're all different ways of thinking about ideas and where ideas can live. And that feels really, really important as how you use creativity in a crisis. It can't just be about making ads, because ads are actually kind of the last thing that people need right now. So that's what I'll leave you with, really. You know, a new formula, if you like, for creativity, I would say, are ideas that solve real problems, not small and bullshitty business problems, but real problems that actually matter. And ideas that work beyond ads and beyond communication. And I would say if you put those two things together, you have a formula for something I would call kind of a real creativity. It's creativity that a child would recognise. It's the creativity to begin to reimagine the world in a better way, which I think is something that we all need. We've all needed it through this crisis. We're definitely going to need it after this crisis. So that's the role, I think, of creativity in a crisis. And I think, that doesn't mean that execution doesn't have a role. So it doesn't mean that I think, that posters and ads and films and all of those things don't have a role, because they're incredibly important. But their role now has changed. And the role, I think, is to imbue what matters with meaning and value, and that's what advertising has always done. But it's tended to imbue things that don't matter with meaning and value. And I now think there's an opportunity to really make things that matter matter more through creativity. So that is the end of that. That's 11 and a half minutes on creativity in a crisis. There are slides, you didn't get to see them. Please donate to Samaritans and watch all of the other much better talks on this platform.